everybody, I'm Caroline Meek and welcome to this tutorial. I'm recording here at Epic Art Studio, and if you are watching this video, you've probably purchased one of our take-home kits, our Epic at Home Pancake stack container. So this is a coil pot, and I have the finished example right here. So this is what we will be making today. Lid comes off, you can store things in there. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I'm gonna just unpack this with you all, and you can just kind of set up your space at the same time if you want. Make sure you've got something covering either the workspace that we sent home with you, or just some newspaper or a plastic bag, something so that the clay doesn't stick to the table. So in this bag, you should have received an Epic at Home form. You wanna make sure you fill this out and send it back with us so we can keep track of your project and contact you when we're finished firing it in the kiln. And let's see, we've got a fork. This can be used to scratch things and attach them to other pieces of clay, or make designs in it or something. Got a paintbrush for putting glazes on. We've got the glazes themselves. Got a couple different colors since this project has a couple different things going on. And last but not least, we've got popsicle stick. So we'll set these aside. Use them a bit later. And of course, can't forget the clay. You should have a big chunk of clay. It's about 1.5 pounds. And you'll want to make sure you keep this dry when you're not using it, or sorry, keep it moist. Do not let it dry out until you are done with the project and you're ready for it to be set and stuff. So open this up. So we're going to be using this big block of clay for the whole project. So we're going to start with making the base, and then we're going to make the coil part of it using the coil pot method, and then we're going to make the lid. So we're going to want to split our clay into a couple different pieces. So this is a good time to use the fork or the popsicle stick to just cut the clay. So for the base, we're going to want probably about 1/3 of the clay. So I'm just going to cut about 1/3 of the clay off. There we go. And then for the main body, we're going to want most of the rest of it. The lid is just going to be a little bit. So I'll just cut a little bit off for the lid here. And then I'm also going to cut just a little bit off for any toppings that I might want to make, like a strawberry or a couple blueberries, the butter on top, etc. So I'll just cut a little extra off for that. So here I've got all my pieces: the base, the coil pot, the toppings, and the lid. So I'm going to set everything aside right now except for the base. And for the base, you can use a rolling pin or something to get it flat, but today I'm just going to use my hands to start kind of pinching it and smushing it down into the shape of a plate. So if it starts cracking around the edges, I like to have just a little bowl of water nearby and some paper towels, and just keep my fingers moist and keep the clay from drying out as I'm kind of pulling it apart. You can use a table to help keep it flat. And I'm just going to go for a circular shape. I don't want it to get too thin at any point because then it could break in the kiln. The kiln is what we will put it in when you bring it back to us. So it will go through the kiln 2 times, get really hot. The first round is called a bisque. And the second round is going to get even hotter, and that is the firing stage. After the firing stage, the piece will be all shiny and hard and food safe, actually, which is a fun fact. So you can store food in this or whatever else you like. So if you want to use your fork to actually cut out a circle, or find a large bowl or something and put it on there and press it down, you can make a more perfect circle if you want to, or you can just kind of eyeball it and do that. So I'm going to cut a little bit off of this edge so it's more circular instead of an oval. And if you're wondering what to do with these scraps of clay, definitely save them and bring them back to us. Just put them in a little bag so they don't dry out, and we can actually recycle them and use them for future projects. So that would be awesome if you save these. So, all right, I've got my circular base. It's not too thin. It's pretty even across the board, not really thick or thin in different places. So I'm gonna leave this here. This will help me figure out what size to make the rest of it. So next, I'm gonna start making the coils. So we're just basically gonna take chunks of clay and roll them out into little snakes and then stack them all up and attach them. I'm gonna start out by just grabbing a chunk of clay off here and start rolling it. Once it gets too long to roll in my hands, I'm just gonna roll it on the table. All right. So I've got this. It's about as long as, my head, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. But if I test it on here, I'm seeing that it is fitting pretty well in there, like a pancake would fit on a plate. So you can decide how big you want that to be. And once you have your size determined, I'm just gonna put this at the top here so I remember, and keep pulling pieces off and making little pancake rings. So when these are all put together, it's gonna look like a bunch of pancakes have just been stacked, but in reality, it's just gonna be these little coils put in a circle and stacked on top of each other. So I'm gonna start rolling these out. And you can make as many pancakes as you want, as many little coils. If you want your pancake stack to be really big and thin, you can do that, or you can make some really long coils and just have a couple pancakes in your stack. Either way. For now, I'm going to pause the video and finish making these coils, so you can also pause the video and then come back and follow along once your coils are done. All right, so I've rolled 6 coils here. I've used up about all my clay for the coiled part of it, and I've got my base here. So as you can see, these coils are about the size of my pinky. I'm not worried about them falling off because they're not too thin in any place. So that's generally the rule, like just don't make anything so thin that it might just rip apart or fall apart as we're like putting it in the kiln or firing it. So I'm gonna start attaching the pancake pieces to the base or the plate. It looks like my clothes are a little bit too big to fit on the plate and leave enough room. So I'm just gonna pinch little pieces off until it's the size I want. Okay, that's better. So generally, when you're attaching any clay to another piece of clay, you want to make sure that it's really firmly mushed together. And ideally, you use this scratch to attach method. So all right, sorry about that, someone was at the door. But anyway, so we're gonna be attaching these and we wanna make sure that they're really attached quite well, otherwise they're just going to fall off and disconnect from each other. So normally we use the scratch to attach method, which you can definitely use. It just involves scratching the surface of the clay and then scratching the surface of the thing you want to connect. So you scratch this side and this side, and then you get them wet. You just put a little water on them so they get like real nice and squishy, and then you squish them together and smooth out the edges. So that's the scratch to attach method. But for this one, since we've got a lot of coils, we're just gonna kind of put them all on top of each other and then smooth the edges up on the inside and on the inside. So you can start just stacking your coils together. And if you want to try to make it really even, you can, or you can make it kind of lopsided, like your pancake stack is about to fall over or something. All right. All right, so I'm just pinching the edges together, and they don't have to be super well attached yet because we're gonna smooth it together soon. My pancake stack is getting higher. And I'm just making sure that it all is lining up and it's structurally sound pancake stack. All right, and my last little coil. Okay, so got a good stack of pancakes on here. Now it's time to smooth it all together on the inside here. And for that, we're going to use popsicle stick. So we're going to start by just dragging it up all along the inside. You can also help this process along with your fingers if you want to get your fingers kind of wet and just like smooth it up. But for now, we're just going to start with this, and we're smoothing it up so that all the pieces kind of meld into each other, and that will help them stick together. So I'm going to use my hand to help the edges. So when I'm pushing on it, that it doesn't like push the whole thing over. So I'm just supporting it on the other side as I pull the popsicle stick up, smoothing the entire inside out. And we're not going to do this with the outside as much because then we would lose that nice texture of the pancake stick. Okay, so I'm going to pause it here and smooth up all the edges, and you can also pause it, and then once you've smoothed out all your edges on the inside, just come back and keep following along. Okay, so I've smoothed out the inside, and now I'm noticing that this edge right here, where the edges of the coils connected, is still a bit rough. So I'm going to just smooth these together a little bit more with my fingers, just to make sure that they don't disconnect at any point. All right, that's better. Okay, so one last thing for making sure everything is connected, I'm going to take my paintbrush and just dip it in the water, and then I'm going to go inside the pot and smooth around the bottom where that very first coil connects with the base. So that one was harder to pull up with my popsicle stick, so I'm just going to make sure that it gets connected and just kind of smooth the clay around at that point where the two merge. And this is a good time to also just smooth out any edges with your paintbrush. Paintbrush is good for putting on glaze, obviously, but it's also good for smoothing out wet clay. All right. All right, so I've smoothed it out. And here we go. We've got our pancake stack. It's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to check on the base and make sure it hasn't stuck to the table. And smooth these edges out a little bit. A little bit more space between there, but I also don't want my clay to get too thin on the bottom. Okay. All right. It's time for the last couple of pieces. You're going to take the chunk of clay that you set aside for your lid, and we're just going to roll it into a ball and then flatten it out. So you want to make sure this lid fits about the same size as your top of the pancake stack. So I'm just going to start smushing this out. And actually, there were some pieces left over from the coils that were too long. So I'm going to mush all these together so I have enough clay to cover the whole top here. Okay, so once you've got your circle, you can do this. If you got the rolling pin, you can use a rolling pin. Gonna make sure it stays, that it doesn't dry out. All right, so let's see. Looks like it needs to be a little bit bigger to fit fully on there. It's okay if it overlaps a little bit because pancakes do that in real life, so. All right, so I've got the top of my pancake stack. I'm gonna set it on here, and then I'm just gonna let it like kind of hang over the edges. This will help it fit later since we're going to fire it separately. So you're gonna wanna let this dry not connected to this, otherwise it might just stick on and you'll never get it off. So, but to make sure that it fits now, just kind of like press it gently over the edges. All right, so there it is. And now is the time where we can make any toppings we want. So in our example here, there is some butter, 3 blueberries, and a strawberry. So you can put whatever you want. If you want to try and make some whipped cream or some strawberries, I'm going to start with the strawberry. I'm just going to pull, I've got about this much clay left, and I'm just going to pull one of the pieces off and start forming it into the shape of a strawberry. I'm going to make sure it has a flat bottom. And when it's about the shape I want, just test it off, like where might it fit here? So it's looking like it doesn't really fit on the plate super well. So I might just like put it on the top. That could be cute. So just decide where you want your toppings to go, and you can make those. For the blueberries, I just take a little bit of clay and roll it around to make a little ball. And there you go, instant blueberry. I'm gonna stick some blueberries around there. Since I don't have a lot of space on my base, I'm not gonna actually end up making the strawberry. I'm just gonna make some more blueberries and then some butter for the top. All right. Nice. So when we are attaching these blueberries to the base, this is when we are going to want to use the scratch to attach method. So you're going to take your blueberry and press it into there just so it gets a little flat on the bottom. So you've got the flat bottom of the blueberry, and you're going to dip your fork in some water and then just gently scratch the bottom of the blueberry just a little bit. And then you're going to scratch on the base where you want the blueberry to go. So you've scratched both sides of this. And I like to just dip my finger in the water, put a little water on here so it stays nice and soft. And then on the base too. And then once you've scratched them both, you're just going to press them together. And hopefully you don't have to press too hard that your blueberry gets messed up. And then you can just use your paintbrush to smooth out the edges and make sure it combines. There you go, scratch to attach method. So do that with all the toppings that you decide to make for your pancake stack. Basically anything that you're attaching, unless you're doing like the coil method where we just drag the popsicle stick off. This is how you help the clay stick to each other. All right. So attach some blueberries. I'm just going to smooth out the edges. If you want to add any texture on the blueberries, you can do that. Like sometimes the blueberries have this little like opening at the top kind of. So you could do that really easily with the fork tool. I'm just going to make a couple little marks in there to add some texture and detail. You can do this at any point with any of the pieces of this project or any project. Okay. Here are my blueberries, they're connected. And you could make a lot more toppings with this, but for now, I'm just going to make a little piece of butter by flattening out some clay. And then I'm going to use the popsicle stick to cut it into the shape of a square so that it is actually a square. So and you can use your fork for this, or if you were using a knife at home or something, that could also work. I just got a little square clay, and I'm going to scratch the bottom of it and scratch the top of the lid where I want it to stick on. All right, I'm going to attach my little piece of butter, and I'm taking the lid off for this because I don't want to cave it in when I press on it. I'm just gently pressing it in there. I'm going to smooth it out with my paintbrush. All right, now it is safely attached here. And I'm going to make another little piece of butter for the top. But in the meantime, I'll pause the video and come back when you've finished all your toppings. Okay, I've got all my toppings attached, and I'm going to put all the extra clay aside in a pile so that we can take it back to Epic, or you can take it back to Epic and we can recycle it. So clay aside, it is time for the last stage of the project, and that is the glaze. So you've got a couple different colors of glaze here, and you've got your paintbrush. So make sure you get all the clay off your paintbrush if you were using it to help smooth things out as you were attaching. And then you can start with whatever color you want. You'll just want to make sure that you coat the glaze well over all parts of it that you want to be painted. So you want to get a good in between and not have it be too thick or too thin. You don't want clumps of paint anywhere, and you don't want it brushed so thin that it's not really going to show up. So I'm going to start with the pancake base itself, and I think I'm just going to do a white for that. So we'll just have like a white plate for the pancake, and this is under glaze, so you can put it directly on the wet clay before anything else happens. Most glazes, you have to put it through the kiln once and do the bisque round before you can put glaze on. But under glaze works just fine when the clay is wet. So I'm just gonna paint this part, and you can decide what colors you want to put where. This clay is white clay. It looks gray right now, but once it's been fired, it will be white. So if you are using this clay and you just want your plate to be white, you don't even have to put the underglaze on. It will come out white in the end. If you're using brown clay, or reclaimed clay, it's gonna end up brown. So if you want your pancakes to just be that color, you can just leave the pancakes as they are and not paint them. That's what I did with this example. So you can see it's just a nice beige color. And I painted the syrup and the butter, but I just left this how it is. So that's all up to you. So yeah, so all that's left to do is just finish painting. So I'll let you finish painting. And one last tip, make sure you don't put any of the glaze under on any of the surfaces that are going to be just sitting on the ground. So don't put any glaze underneath your lid, and don't put any glaze underneath the base of your plate, because the glaze, when we put it in the kiln and it gets really hot, it will stick and it will basically glue your piece to the bottom of the kiln. So just make sure you only paint the top surfaces and the side. So have fun glazing your piece, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Just remember to bring this back to us when you're done, along with the Epic at Home form, and we'll put it through the process of the kiln and then let you know when it's ready to come pick up. So email us if you've got any questions or if you've got ideas for future projects, and we'll see you next time. Bye.